Thank you for joining us today at Inspire the Spirit. So this past 10 days or so, we set our clocks forward. Yesterday, we changed seasons, being the first day of spring. Then, of course, here in Oklahoma, we're in the middle of spring break week. You see, everything we kind of do in life is coordinated and identified by time. And we measure time, 24 hours we have in a day. That's 1,440 minutes each and every day that we all get. Rich, poor, left, right, big, skinny, whoever you are, it doesn't matter. We're all equalized by the amount of time we have in a day, and what we choose to do with each minute dictates and decides not only our future, but the benefits of those around us. And today we're going to talk about time for others. You see, we live in a world with a short attention span, and we all have really busy schedules. They say the average attention span of American today is 15 minutes, that an individual cannot concentrate on a single task purpose for longer than 15 minutes, and their mind begins to wander. And that attention span drops dramatically each and every year. One of the main reasons is our devices, our see it now, respond now, our phones, our tablets, they leave us perpetually distracted. We always have them nearby. I have mine nearby. Everybody's got one out there. People that aren't paying attention will put them under the table and look at them. We can't even go 15 minutes without being distracted by a laptop, a computer, a television, some device. And we rarely truly engage in those around us in the moment. But we have to understand life is really not measured by time. Life is really a collection of moments and how we spend them with people. Have you ever been in a restaurant and you've seen a large family having a meal and they're all on their phones? They've all carved time out to go eat, spend time together, talk about their day, what's going on. And if you look, you'll see half of them are on their phones. And half of them will have the phones under the table as if it doesn't exist. No one else knows what you're doing. But we get distracted, and instead of engaging in a personal relationship, we continue to be distracted, and we don't make time for others. Have you ever tried to talk to someone that has the little earbuds in their ear? I go to the gym and I'm walking by and I'll hear somebody say, "Hey, how you doing?" I'll stop and say, "Oh, great." And then I realize they just took a phone call and they're talking to somebody else. They weren't even talking to me. And it's distracting, and you don't know whether to respond or not. And now it's proven that we actually, as human beings, text more than we call. Most people send more text than they make phone calls now. If we want better relationships, we must learn how to be available to others, to pay attention, to engage, to respect other people's time, and be willing to share our time with them as well. There was a story about a teacher recently. And right before spring break, she was grading some homework paper by her students. And she was sitting at her kitchen table, grading the paper to get it all graded and all done before spring break started. Her husband was sitting on the bar stool on a little counter pretty close to her, scrolling on his phone, and he was playing his favorite game. Whatever that game was, he was engaged in his game. She's grading the papers. Pretty soon he looked up and his wife had tears running down her face. And he asked her, "What's wrong?" She goes, "Well, I'm grading these papers and I gave my students an assignment to turn in before they left for spring break, and the assignment was called My Wish. And they could wish to be anything they wanted to be. What would happen?" He says, "Okay." She goes, "Well, One of my students, this last paper really kind of brought me to tears. And husband said, well, what did it say? And she said this. She was reading this young student's homework assignment. And it said, my wish is to become a smartphone. My parents love their smartphone very much. They care about their smartphone so much that sometimes they forget about me. When my father comes home from the office tired after a long day of work, he has time for a smartphone, but not for me. When my parents are doing something important at home, and cleaning or working or cooking, and the phone rings, within a single ring, they reach and run for their phone. And yet, they often ignore me, even if I'm crying. They play games on their smartphones, even when I'm in the room, but they don't play games with me. When they're talking to someone on their smartphone, they'll answer even if I'm talking and trying to tell them something important and start to ignore me. So my wish is to become a smartphone. After listening to this, the husband got really emotional and said, wow, which student was that? And the wife said, that was our daughter. You see, sometimes even the people we're closest to, we ignore them. We get distracted, and we can't give them the time and the attention that we deserve. Philippians chapter 2, verse 4 says, do not be interested in your own life, but be interested in the lives of others. And that's really hard to do in our culture. Our society has created a me-first culture. You do you. Take care of you first. And we ignore what Jesus has called us to do, to care for others. It's an upside-down kingdom. We're to be last. We're to serve. But putting others first is against our human nature. You see, I might not be interested in the same things you are, so maybe I don't find a reason to engage. We often seek attention with people that have similar interests to us. But your time and your attention might be the greatest gift you can give somebody. And why? It's because of time. Time is something we all have in life, but it's a limited commodity. And we don't know when that commodity is going to run out. And being a commodity, that makes it valuable. Now, half of us waste way too much of our time. Half of us live in the past, trying to undo a regret, reliving a mistake, asking the what ifs. Instead of just learning life's lessons, we just dwell on the past, not focusing on the present. The other half of us live in the future, worrying about things that we can't even control, instead of just giving that to God and staying in the present. Because what we do in the present will take care of what happens in the future. But what makes others valuable? What is 1 hour of their time worth to you? What is 1 hour of your time worth? How much would you be willing to give to spend 1 hour with that one special person in your life? Think about somebody you would really like to just have 1 hour of undivided attention today, just to talk to them, just to engage. What would it be worth to you? There was a preacher recently. Now, we know preachers have really busy schedules. We think they work 1 hour Sunday mornings, but they're on call 24/7. They're constantly getting phone calls and ministering. And it's a very stressful, very time-consuming job. Well, this preacher had also taken it upon himself. He decided a year ago he was going to write a book. It was his first book. And he dove into it. He gave it every ounce of energy he had. And for a year, every spare moment, he wrote and stayed up late. He got up early. He spent every free moment working on this book. And the book got published. And the week it got released, he was going to visit 8 bookstores in 4 days, Monday through Thursday. 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, 4 days, 8 appearances, and do book signings. and promote this new book that he'd been putting all of his time and effort into. Well, the book signing happened. He got done. He was exhausted Thursday night. He went to the office Friday morning. The book was out. He'd fulfilled his obligations. He plopped down in his office chair exhausted. His assistant came in. He goes, "Wow, I'm glad it's Friday. I can finally rest." And she goes, "Yeah, oh, by the way, don't forget you have that luncheon today." He said, "What luncheon?" She goes, "Remember, we raffled off a ticket to the congregation that they could spend 1 hour at lunch with you and have your undivided attention just to share with you." And I hear the young man paid $500 for the winning ticket, and he drained his savings account just for this event. He said, "Wow, that's impressive." So he walks into the restaurant and he goes to the reserved table to meet the person that won the raffle. And there smiling at him was his teenage son, who just said, "Hey, Dad, been looking forward to this luncheon. Just wanted to spend and see if I could get 1 hour of your time." See, oftentimes we get so busy with our personal schedules and our obligations, we forget and we don't see the people that are searching for our attention. Ephesians 4:2 says, "Always be humble and gentle, be patient with each other, making allowance for each other's fault because of your love." Your time is the most powerful tool you have in a relationship. Are you interested in the same things as your kids? Do you know what your kids are interested in? Do you know where they're at, what hobbies they're doing, what activities they're in, what classes they're taking? Do you engage? Are you interested in your coworker's day? Can you tell if your coworker's having a bad day or a good day or something's troubling them? And are you interested? See, giving others our undivided attention tells them that they're important to us, that they mean something to us. And what are some ways we can show interest to others? There's probably someone that each of us has been saying for the past week or month, "I need to call that person. I've been meaning to call and talk to them." And every day you have good intentions of just when you're driving, we have a free moment, you're going to call this certain individual just to check in on them. And yet, we haven't done it today. There's somebody we know that probably has an illness, that is suffering from something, and we've told ourselves, "I need to check in on them. I need to stop by and maybe give them some soup, see how they're doing, follow up with them." And every day we have good intentions. We're going to carve out a little bit of time. And above all, there's always that person that we tell them in passing. We ask them something, and they share, and they tell us something's on their mind. And we say, "What? I'll pray for you." Like we talked with some people last week, when you tell someone you're going to pray for them, we need as Christians to take that seriously, because when we say, "I'll pray for you," you're saying, I'm going to go to the highest power in the universe, the ultimate deity, God the Father in heaven, and I'm going to petition on your behalf. What you just told me, what I just said, "I'll pray for you," and then half the time we forget and never pray about it, that person's depending on you because you just told them, "I'm going to go to God, and I'm going to talk to them on your behalf, and I'm going to make that time." And that's a commitment that we should all take seriously. We have to prioritize what is important. And then we got to budget that time for those who are important to us. It reminds me of the story of the professor. He walked into his classroom. He had one of those large glass jars, like one of those giant pickle jars, if they even have those anymore. Where I grew up, when you checked out at the little gas station, you had a pickle jar, you had some pickled eggs, and you had some hog's feet. All three jars laid out. And sometimes you had some beef jerky, and you just stuck your hand in there and grabbed it, whatever it is. But this professor walks in with this large glass jar, and he puts the jar in the center of the table so all the students gather around. And he sets his bag down. He takes out some large rocks, and he starts putting the rocks in the jar one at a time, until he can't put another large rock about the size of his fist. He can't fit another rock in the jar. And he steps back and he asks the class, is the jar full? And they all go, yeah, the jar's full. He reaches into his bag and he pulls out a burlap sack, pulls a string, and he dumps pebbles into the jar. And the entire sack of pebbles fall in between all the cracks in the empty spaces that the big rocks couldn't fill, and it takes the entire bag. And he says, is the jar now full? Well, half the students have figured out this game, and they're real quiet. The other half of the room says, yeah, now it's full. Then he takes out, he has a Ziploc bag full of the most fine sand you can find. And he starts dumping the sand into this jar. And the sand filters and finds every nook, cranny, crevice that it possibly can that remained. And the entire sand fills up to the top of the jar. And he asked, is this jar now full? And it was kind of quiet. And someone said, yeah, I think so. And he says, yeah, it's full now. And see, this jar in this example is important because the large rocks represent the things most important to you, your family, your friends, your loved one. The most important things are these big rocks. The pebbles represent our everyday task. It's our jobs, it's our kids, our hobbies, the things that we have to do everything. They're the pebbles. The sand, the little bitty sand, represents the small stuff. It's the gossip, it's the lies, it's the distractions on Facebook, it's the bad news that we get distracted in. It doesn't take up much space. Don't spend a lot of time on that, kids. Focus on the rocks. The pebbles will always find their place. Your work will always find a place. The sand, it's really irrelevant. Don't worry, don't sweat the small stuff. And he says, but there's a more important lesson here. The more important lesson is the order in which I put them in the jar. If I'd put the sand in first, the little problems, the little gossip and stories and somebody's talking about the little problems in this world, the sand would have filled up a base. And then if I focused on my work and my tasks and put the pebbles in second, they would have took up the next amount of space. And if I'd saved the most important things, the big rocks, for last, they would not have had enough room to fit. So it's important that you prioritize and take care of the important things in your life first. Work and life will always find its room, and the sand doesn't matter. And the students were amazed. And then he reached into the bag and he pulled out a glass of water and he poured an entire glass of water and it filled up the jar. And finally, a brave little girl says, well, what's the water represent? And he said, no matter how full your life is, there's always time for coffee with a loved one or a Diet Coke with a friend. Always make time to enjoy a beverage with those closest to you. 1 John 3:18 said, let us not merely say that we love each other, let us show the truth by our actions. Giving time to others is really an act of love. And Jesus called us to love others, even those that we don't always have a good relationship with. Inquiring as to how someone's doing shows concern, and it's a selfless act. You never know when a simple message, a word of encouragement, changes someone's outlook or an entire day. We transform our relationships by focusing on the individual standing right in front of us. You ever had somebody walk into your office and they're trying to talk to you and you're still looking at your computer screen, clicking? You ever had somebody come in there or talking to you and the phone rings and you look down to see who it is? You just told that person, this might be more important than you. Oh, what'd you want? You came here to talk to me. There's a live human being right in front of us. and yet we get distracted. We can't give them our full attention, even for a short span of time. Jesus summed it all up when pushed about all the laws of the world. Sum it up in Matthew 22:39. He said, a second is equally important. Love your neighbors yourself. The Pharisees had cornered him. They wanted to know what the most important law and rule was on the books. He said, love God first, and the second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. So as we wrap up here, we're real close. We're 11 days out from Easter. Connect with somebody this Easter. The Easter season is about connection. God had time for us. Jesus took time to carry his cross to the hill. We should connect with somebody else this Easter. Invite them to church. Share a meal with them. Hunt some eggs with a child. Just be present and attentive. Put away the phone. Put away the to-do list, the emails, the text, the voicemails. They're all going to be there Monday morning. Let's close in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We just pray and ask that you would give us an attentive mindset, one that is not distracted by the noise and the outside concerns of this world, and that we can approach each other just as we approach your throne of grace in prayer, and you listen and you hear us. We pray that we can take time today to focus on others, to be attentive, and to be present in the moment. The past is gone. We can't change it. The future, you only control and know. May we live in the present each and every day. For it's in your Son's name we ask. Amen. Thanks for joining us today. Next Wednesday's the 27th. We'll do our Easter message, and that'll be our last message of March. So thanks. Have a blessed week.